I want to ask you a question, and I want you to really sit with it before you answer. How many times have you tried to lose weight in the past? If you're like most of the people I've worked with over the past 30 years, the answer, it's a lot more than you would like to say out loud. Research shows that the average woman over 50 has tried to lose weight 11 times. 11 genuine attempts. 11 times she committed, she sacrificed, followed the rules, and ended up back where she started or worse. And at some point, for most people, it stopped feeling like the program was failing. It started feeling like they were failing, like a lean, healthy body was simply not something available to a person like them. What I want to show you today is why that conclusion, as understandable as it may be, is completely and scientifically wrong. The problem was never you. The problem was never your willpower, your metabolism, or your age. The problem was something far more specific and far more fixable. And by the time this video is over, you'll understand exactly what it was. My name is Stavros Mastrogiannis. I've been helping people lose weight and improve their health for over 30 years, right here in Danbury, Connecticut. In that time, I worked with more than 1,500 clients and have learned one thing above everything else. The people who struggle are not struggling because their bodies are broken or lack commitment. They are struggling because they're working against their bodies. And the moment that changes, everything changes. I want to start with something that might seem unrelated, but stay with me because by the end of it, you will see yourself in it clearly. Imagine a jar of fleas. You put them in, seal the lid, and watch. Fleas are extraordinary jumpers. They can leap more than 100 times their own height. But inside the jar, every jump ends the same way. They hit the lid, they fall back down, they jump again, they hit the lid again, and fall back down again. After enough repetitions, something remarkable happens. The fleas stop jumping as high. They have learned at the level of the nervous system exactly where the ceiling is. They adjust and they stop trying to exceed it. Then you remove the lid and the fleas stay in the jar. Not because they cannot get out. Physically, nothing is stopping them. The lid no longer exists in the jar. It exists inside the flea. The same principle shows up with elephants. Young circus elephants are restrained with heavy chains they genuinely cannot break. They strain against them with everything they have over and over until eventually they stop trying. When the trainers later switched to a simple rope, something the fully grown elephant could snap without a second thought, the elephant does not move, doesn't even test it. Not because the rope is strong, because the memory of the chain is stronger. The physical restraint was removed years ago. The psychological one never was. Now, consider what becomes possible when that conditioning is completely absent. In 1940s, a student named George Dantzig arrived late to his statistics class at Berkeley. He saw two problems on the board, assumed they were homework, and solved them over the next few days. When he turned them in, his professor was barely able to contain his excitement. Those problems were not homework. They were famous unsolved problems in mathematics, problems the world's top mathematicians had believed for years could not be solved. He solved them because nobody told him they were impossible. The ceiling was not real. The lid was not real. They never are. The only thing standing between those mathematicians and the solution was an assumption. Remove the assumption, and what was impossible becomes a few days of focused work. Now, does any of this feel familiar? Here's what the data actually shows. Women between 18 and 49 have attempted to lose weight an average of 9 times. Women over 50, 11 times. People who have struggled most with their health report trying as many as 13 times. 13 attempts, 13 times they committed, 13 times they hit the lid and fell back down. And somewhere between attempt 5 and attempt 13, the conclusion stopped being that the program did not work, and it became, I'm someone who cannot do this. That is not a character flaw. That is a behavioral conditioning. It is the exact same mechanism that keeps the fleas in the jar and the elephants standing next to a rope that could snap in an instant. But here's the part that changes everything. The conditioning was not random. It was installed attempt by programs that were built in direct opposition to how the human body actually works. Research consistently shows that fewer than 5% of people who lose weight through conventional diet and exercise programs keep it off long term. 5%. That means 95 out of every 100 people did exactly what they were told, and the program failed them. More than 80% regained everything they lost within 5 years, and most gained back even more. That is not a personal failure rate. That is a program failure rate. Before I show you what actually works, I need to do something first. I need to prove to you, not just tell you, but actually prove to you that what happened before was not your fault. I know that might sound like something coaches say to make people feel better. It is not. This is not reinsurance. This is evidence, because here's what I've learned in 30 years of working with people. If you walk into a new approach still carrying the belief that you are someone who fails at this, that belief will quietly sabotage your progress even when everything around you is finally right. So let me show you exactly why the programs failed, not in vague terms, but mechanically. Think carefully about what these programs are actually asking you to do. Count every calorie, eliminate entire food groups, force yourself through workouts you dread, say no every single day to things that feel completely natural. These are not behaviors that can ever become automatic. They're behaviors that require conscious effort, discipline, and motivation every single time for the rest of your life. And motivation is not a system. It's a feeling that comes and goes. Nobody stays motivated forever. And any program that requires you to stay motivated forever is a program that is designed structurally to eventually fail you. Consider the habit of brushing your teeth. At some point, it became so deeply habitual, it now happens automatically. No motivation required. No mental energy spent. No willpower required. It simply happens. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time a diet program gave you anything that felt like that? Conventional programs give you behaviors you have to fight yourself to maintain for life. Behaviors that will never become automatic because they work against your instincts, against your social life, against everything that makes eating and movement natural and enjoyable. Now, look at what you just heard. The programs asked you to fight your own instincts, to go against human nature. They asked you to sustain willpower indefinitely, a resource that neuroscientists tells us is finite and guaranteed to run out. They gave you behaviors that could never become automatic, which means that mental cost never decreased. It only accumulated. And when the biology did exactly what the biology was always going to do, the programs handed you a conclusion. You failed. That conclusion was a lie, a structural lie built into every program that operates this way. The program was incapable of succeeding with any normal human being, with anyone who was not willing to make their diet and exercise routine the central focus of their entire life. There is a very small group of people, less than 5% of the population. So unless you want to make weight management your full-time job, unless you are prepared to spend the rest of your life counting, tracking, and white-knuckling your way through every meal, the program was never going to work for you. Not because of anything wrong with you, but because of everything wrong with the design. That is not an opinion. That is the mechanism. Now, let me show you the science behind exactly why this is true. There is hard science behind every word I just said. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never think about your inner world the same way again. Most people think of assumptions as a mental events, things that happen in the mind and stay there. but that understanding dramatically undersells what an assumption actually does. Dr. Bruce Lipton spent years as a cell biologist at Stanford University School of Medicine. In his laboratory, he took genetically identical cells and placed them in different environments. Same cells, same DNA, completely different behavior depending on the environment that we're living in. His conclusion? It is not your genes that control your biology. It's your perception of your environment. And for human beings, the most powerful environment your cells live in is the one created by your beliefs. This field, epigenetics, has since been confirmed by hundreds of independent research studies worldwide. What you believe sends signals to your cells. Those signals change gene expression. And gene expression, multiplied across 37 trillion cells, change your physical reality. Now, here's how this works in daily life. Deep in your brainstem sits a network of neurons called the reticular activating systems, the RAS. Think about the last time you bought a new car. The moment you drove it off the lot, you suddenly started seeing the exact car everywhere. It felt like the road was full of them overnight. The cars were always there. The RAS just started letting them through because they now match something you believed was relevant to you. It filters your reality based on your assumptions. Assume you're capable of lasting change, your RAS searches for evidence that confirms it. Small wins registered, progress gets noticed. Assume you're someone who always fails. Well, your RAS highlights every setback and filters out every encouraging sign. The same progress passes completely unseen. When you operate from an assumption of struggle, when your deep inner belief is that getting healthy is hard, your brain activates the stress response. Cortisol floods your system, hunger hormones get disrupted, decision-making gets impaired. The very assumption of difficulty creates the biological conditions that make it difficult. The assumption of struggle is not just a mindset. It's a prescription written in cortisol and stress hormones that your body faithfully fills. In 2002, a landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine tested whether arthroscopic knee surgery for osteoarthritis actually worked, or whether the relief patient experienced was something else entirely. 180 patients were divided into 3 groups: real surgery, saline flush, and the third group, sham surgery. These patients were fully sedated, prepared exactly like the others. The surgeon made 3 small incisions. The team even splashed saline to recreate the sounds of the procedure, but no instruments ever entered the joint. The patients woke up with the same bandages, the same recovery instructions, and the complete assumption that they had received real surgery. After 2 years of follow-up, all 3 groups reported equivalent pain relief, equivalent improvement in walking and climbing stairs. The patients whose knees were never touched did just as well as the patients who received the actual procedure. At certain points during the follow-up, the sham surgery group reported better outcomes than the real surgery group. The surgery did not heal the knee. The assumption of surgery healed the knee. At that time, arthroscopic knee procedures were generating roughly $3 billion annually in the United States. The study prompted major revisions to surgical guidelines, and it's now considered one of the most powerful demonstrations of a principle that changes everything about how we understand health and healing. Dr. Ellen Langer, a professor of psychology at Harvard University, in one of her most revealing studies, she worked with hotel housekeeping staff, women whose job required them to be physically active all day long, moving rooms, lifting mattresses, pushing carts, scrubbing bathrooms. By any objective measure, they were getting significant daily exercise. But when asked, the majority of these women said they did not exercise. They did not think of the work as exercise. And their bodies, consistent with that assumption, showed all the markers of a sedentary lifestyle. Elevated blood pressure, higher body weight, poor cardiovascular indicators. So Dr. Langer divided them into two groups. One group was simply informed, showed basically the research on how their daily work qualified as genuine exercise, how it burned calories, how it met health guidelines. They were told their bodies were already receiving the benefits of an active lifestyle. The other group received no information. 4 weeks later, with no change in behavior, no change in diet, no additional exercise, the informed group had lost weight, lowered their blood pressure, and showed measurable improvements across every health marker tested. The uninformed group showed no changes. The work did not change. The body did not change its activities. The only thing that changed was the assumption that women were living from. And that assumption change produced real, measurable physical results in 4 weeks. In 1979, Dr. Langer conducted what is now known as the counterclockwise study. She took a group of men in their late 70s and brought them into a retreat meticulously designed to replicate life exactly as it was 20 years earlier. The music, the news, the magazines, the films, the conversations, everything was calibrated to 1959. The men were asked to fully inhabit the present as it were actually in 1959, to speak in the present tense, to discuss current events as current, to fully occupy the identity of men 20 years younger than they were. After just 1 week, the results were measurable across every dimension tested. Grip strength increased, posture improved, vision improved, hearing improved, memory and cognitive test scores were actually higher, and independent judges shown photographs of the men taken before and after the retreat without being told which one was which, consistently rated the after pictures as looking visibly younger. Their diets did not change, their medications did not change, their exercise routines did not change. The only thing that changed was the assumption they were living from. And their bodies executed that assumption with complete biological fidelity. This study has since been replicated in multiple countries with consistent results. It is not an anomaly. It is a repeatable demonstration of a principle that science keeps confirming from every direction. The body does not know the difference between the assumption of youth and youth itself. It only knows the instruction it has been given and executes those instructions faithfully. By now, you might be asking a reasonable question. If this science is real, if it's sitting in peer-reviewed journals, if it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, why is this not the first thing every doctor tells you? The answer is not complicated, and it is not a conspiracy. It comes down to one simple economic reality. Nobody makes money when your mind does the healing. Think about what would happen if this research became the centerpiece of mainstream medicine. If patients routinely healed chronic conditions, regulated their weight, and restored their body's natural systems through the power of assumption alone, without surgeries, without prescriptions, without ongoing interventions, what would the cost to the medical industry be? Billions, conservatively that is. The medical industry is not run by villains suppressing cures in secret boardrooms. It's run by publicly traded companies answering to shareholders operating under the same profit pressures as many other businesses. They invest in what generates revenue. They promote what they can sell. Solving your problem is not their primary intention. Profiting from your problem is. And those two things are not the same. When a more effective solution generates less revenue than a less effective one, the less effective solution gets funded, researched, marketed, and placed in front of you. The more effective one gets quietly set aside, not out of malice, but out of math. You are not poorly informed because the science does not exist. You are poorly informed because the science is not profitable to the industry. I want to tell you where all this started for me, because it did not start in a laboratory. It did not start with a book or a certification. It started in a small village in Greece where I was born and raised and still visit every summer. In that village and in villages like it across the Mediterranean, I watched something I could not explain at that time, but that has shaped everything I have done since. I watched men and women in their 80s and 90s who were lean, not just surviving, but working with their land, eating full, generous meals, sharing wine with friends and laughing, fully alive. Nobody in that village was on a diet. Nobody was counting calories. Nobody was dragging themselves to a gym out of obligation. Nobody was fighting their body. They were simply living, and their bodies responding to that life maintained health, leanness as a natural outcome. Not the goal, the outcome. I came to America. I watched what happened here. I watched an entire culture adopt a completely different relationship with food, with movement, with their own bodies. And I watched the results. Obesity, chronic disease, $1 billion industry selling solutions to a problem that never existed in the village I was raised. The people in that village were not generically exceptional. They were simply living in alignment with what the human body was designed to do. And the body, when it's not being fought, when it's not being overridden, not being conditioned to distrust itself, does exactly what it's designed to do. It stays lean, it stays healthy, it regulates itself quietly, effortlessly in the background. So let me bring this back to where we started. You have really tried to lose weight and get in shape. And you have a nervous system that has registered every attempt and drawn a conclusion from it, that a lean and healthy body is not in the cards for you. That conclusion feels like a fact. It feels like you have simply learned something true about yourself. But it is not a fact. It's a conditioned assumption. And conditioned assumptions, as the science shows clearly, can be replaced. The flea can learn that the lid is gone. The elephant can learn that the rope will not hold. The nervous system that was trained to expect failure can be retrained to expect something completely different. Not through willpower, not through discipline, not through fighting, through understanding, through working with human nature instead of against it, through building behaviors that become so natural and automatic that maintaining your health requires no more mental effort than brushing your teeth. The hotel maids lost weight without changing a single behavior because the assumption changed. The men whose knees were never touched healed as well as the men who had real surgery because the assumption changed. The men in their late 70s grew stronger, sharper, and visibly younger in 1 week because the assumption changed. And the toothbrush, the habit that once required reminders and motivation, now happens without a second thought. The same way brushing your teeth stopped requiring willpower, the moment it stopped requiring a fight, every healthy behavior in your life can reach the same place. In every case, the body did not wait for the circumstances to change. It responded to the assumption about the circumstances. And it responded completely, faithfully, and without exception. Your assumption is the variable. It always has been. That is exactly what this program works on. Not willpower, not motivation. 2 things. the assumptions you are living from, and the behaviors they need to become so habitual they run on their own. When both of those shift, the effort required drops to almost nothing, and the results that follow are not temporary because they are coming from the right place. If any of what you heard today resonates with you, if something shifted even slightly in the way you're thinking about your body and what is actually possible, I would like to invite you to take one simple step. Schedule a free discovery session with me. This is not a sales call. It's a real conversation. In that conversation, I will show you exactly how we work with your body's natural intelligence instead of against it. How we help people change the unhelpful assumptions that are sabotaging the results, and how we only work with healthy behaviors that can become completely habitual, so the results you achieve can be maintained effortlessly. We will talk about what has been getting in the way for you specifically, and I will show you what a completely different approach actually looks like in practice, step by step, in the way that fits your real life. Most people who sit down with me are surprised by two things: how simple the approach actually is, and how different it feels from everything they have tried before. Not because I've discovered something magical, but because when you stop fighting your body and start working with it, when the behaviors become natural, habitual, and automatic, the effort required drops to almost nothing. And the results that follow are not temporary. They are permanent because they're coming from the right place. You have been jumping faithfully inside a jar that has never meant to let you out. You are not weak. You're conditioned, and conditioning can be changed. The link to schedule your free discovery session is right below this video. We work with clients both in person here in Denver, Connecticut, and online nationwide. There is no obligation, there is no pressure. There is just a real conversation about what becomes possible when you finally stop working against yourself and start working with what your body has been waiting to do all along. I would love to talk to you soon. Click the link below and let's find a time.